Hello,
Hey there.
how are you?
Good to see you, or not see you.
Yeah, I'm just gonna eat my dinner, then I'll join video.
Perfectly fine.
So my daughter was on this thing on the Atlantic Council. She was being interviewed about her book. So I wasn't able to talk to you while you were on the train or whatever, about that whole, using park space. Actually, it was about petitions or getting signatures or permission from neighbors, to use the street space for Parkside.
Yeah, I sort of lost the thread there. Are we talking street space or park space?
Both.
Or both.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But you had said that if they wanted to do that, whatever that street program is, that it would be helpful to get the sort of the okay in advance from the neighbors, like to
Well,
close off a street.
I was likening it. Yeah, program may be too sophisticated a word. There are play streets,
Right.
and generally speaking, play street permissions are granted by the DOT, but they want to see a recommendation from the community board first. And there are only a few on the Upper West Side. There was one that was a huge knockdown drag out for years on 107th Street. Hey Ken, on 107th Street. And at one time, the solution was contemplated to make the play street 108th instead. And that was a non-starter because there was a parking garage at one end of 108th Street. And the DOT would essentially not consider any solution that would block off a street that would prohibit a parking garage from having people come and go.
I know that there's not a parking garage on the street. They said there is a school, and I forget the name of it now, and some kind of a home. I mean, this whole thing is just, I'm sure you can appreciate how many meetings we're having to talk about potentially reopening and what the reopening plan is, et cetera. So they're kind of just looking to see what all the options might be.
Yep.
So, but I'll talk to you more, maybe tomorrow when we're on the other call at the end of the other call. Okay.
Great.
Okay, good. Sorry, because I know we're starting part. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Hey, everyone.
Hi.
Hi. So it looks as if we have all of our members plus Doug Kleiman. Shelley had said he was going to join us tonight. Oh, suddenly we have 14 attendees.
Yeah, when you broadcast, the attendees are admitted, and I'm promoting our colleagues.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
And you're promoting Helen.
I am.
I thought Helen wasn't going to be able to join us. That's great.
That may well be Marisa or Julian.
It's
Yeah.
Julian.
Hi,
Good
Julian.
evening, everyone.
Hey, Julian,
Hi,
good to see
Julian.
you. Welcome.
We ready to get started?
If you are, I guess we should, Elizabeth.
I think we should. Let's open it up.
Okay, so do you want to start? Want me to start? Oh, we need somebody to take the minute. Oh, there's Barbara Adler. She's joined us too. That's great. We need somebody. Susan Schwartz is not with us yet. I think all our other committee members are on, which is great. Who's going to do the minutes? Elizabeth, you want to find a volunteer for us?
I'm happy to ask for a volunteer. I don't know how, Mark, in this era of digital, if this meeting is being recorded, right?
Yes, it is.
So I think I don't know what the rules are yet on how people can use the online piece as they do the minutes, but I've always found that to be a helpful thing to do. So
The easiest way to do it is to go onto our YouTube channel. At the end of the meeting, I saved the YouTube, and that seems to work better than the Zoom recording. So
Okay.
I recommend that.
but my point is that I think pen and paper in this Zoom era is trumped by either going to the YouTube or doing it on Zoom. So if it makes it easy, and my point is that it'll make it easier for whoever on the board may want to do it this month. So I don't know if we draw straws. I mean, I'm happy to do the recording and do it. We have one item on the agenda. I'm happy to do it if nobody else wants to do it, given.
Okay, I completely disagree. I think that written minutes, accurate written minutes that one can look at on our website as a document, as a written document are.
No, that's not what I was saying, Clary. What I was saying was that.
I know we've got the Zoom backup, but I think we need minutes. We need normal written minutes that become
Right,
a
the minutes
document.
will be written, but my point is
Yeah.
they write them after seeing, they can take notes and then they
Oh.
can write them after reviewing. If they need to see somebody in their name, which the names
Sure.
of everyone is listed on here, they can get the spellings correct.
Of course.
It's a very useful tool and I think
Oh,
it should be
yeah.
used more
I
frequently.
thought you meant sort of in lieu of or semi in
Nope.
lieu of, but you didn't.
Nope,
Yeah,
not at all.
it is a useful tool to help create accurate written minutes, but we need somebody to do it. Who, do we have a volunteer tonight? We don't have a volunteer yet, do we?
Maybe Susan,
Looks like Natasha is volunteering.
Natasha? Thank
Natasha?
you,
I can
Natasha.
volunteer, yes.
Okay, and Natasha, we've all maybe not for the first time, learned something, which is perhaps before actually sending them to us, you may choose to review the Zoom session that'll help you with names and things like that.
Sure.
So, Elizabeth, anything
Clary,
else?
Elizabeth, if I could just interject for 1 second. I got a request from Peter Arnson, who is in the attendees, to make a quick announcement with respect to an upcoming event. Is that okay? And
Sure.
Sure.
No, that's great. And I see that Gail's also joined.
Right, which is great.
terrific. Peter, can you hear us? And if so, can you unmute and give us the lowdown? Try it now.
Peter?
Okay, can you hear me now?
There
Yes.
you go.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. It took me a moment. Quickly, this Saturday, the trees are really stressed. We've been watering occasionally. We've been weeding some, but they're just in trouble. And we're hoping to get a load of mulch from Parks Department Saturday morning. And we're working with tree stewards that we've been trying to develop a cadre of to distribute it on trees. I most likely on the bike lanes because they seem to be the ones that are in the most stressed situation. But just know that that's out there and that if people are interested, they can contact us through our email info@Columbus Amsterdam Bid. And we'll be trying to do that this Saturday. The only other thing that I'll mention is that our annual meeting is coming up Thursday, the 30th in the evening at 5 o'clock. And if people would like to join that, send us an email and we'll make sure we get the invitation and information to you. Thank you for allowing me to say this early.
Sure, Peter, thank you.
Excuse me, Peter, what is the address, the email address?
It's info@Columbus Amsterdam Bid. I'll put it into the chat. Okay, Natasha?
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so just a reminder to committee members and non-committee board members, just please put in the chat your name, which will help us to keep a record of who is on the, who's here, of the attendance. So let's move right into our first item because we are delighted to have Gail Brewer with us tonight. She was the author of the legislation or part of the legislation that we're talking about tonight. And I had a call just before the meeting from Steve Simon from the Parks Department. They're not able to join us tonight, but Matt Genrich, who is a Parks person, typically joins us and we're expecting him. And we have Julian De La Porta from Helen Rosenthal's office as well. And we're expecting Eric from Council Member Levine's office. I'm not sure if he's with us yet. Eric and Julian should be made participants, right, Mark?
Sure, and I just wanted to note while we're on that theme that Erica Overton from Linda Rosenthal's office
yes.
is also with us. Thank you for joining all of these folks, and I'll promote
Sure.
Eric as soon as he gets here.
Okay, So let me start with this one because I'll tell you, I actually have sort of sponsoring this one tonight. The last two resolutions we talked about at our two prior committee meetings were sponsored by one of our members, but I'm kind of the one primarily behind this one. These are issues about smoking in our parks that I've been thinking about for a while, but additionally, this was really spurred by a community member named Janice Horowitz, who is one of our attendees tonight. She had contacted the board. She and I had spoken a couple of times, and it really was a good spur for us to actually come up with this as an agenda item for tonight that's very timely. So I had distributed to committee members a draft resolution that I read this afternoon, but also, and Mark has that, he can put it on the screen when we want to, but also had created a document that shows, and maybe you could put this on right now for a moment, Mark, what the current law is concerning smoking and non-smoking, the smoking prohibition in our parks and what the New York City parks and what the exceptions are. I'll be very impressed, Mark, if you're able to do this. So I just took from the statute the definitions, which define smoking as doing just about anything, and it does now include e-cigarettes too, but with tobacco. And then there's this prohibition in our parks, which is what we talk about here in this committee, but it accepts from the prohibition sidewalks immediately adjoining parks, squares, and public spaces, places. You'll see that at the bottom. Basically, pedestrian areas on our strips such as the Broadway malls, but it's probably also Ocean Parkway and things like that, and parking lots in parks, and then theatrical productions, which I think is probably not something we much care about. So the issues are, and the reason we are talking about this tonight is that first of all, there's no, if I can just sort of do an intro here and then we'll turn it over for discussion. There's really no enforcement by, and this is not a resolution asking for enforcement. This resolution asking the council to, if our resolution is adopted, to change the law. But there is no enforcement, and the Parks Department website specifically says we expect citizen enforcement. So it's up to us to enforce. But there are areas of the parks where some of them are ambiguous, such as areas in Riverside Park where there's no clear perimeter sidewalk. Others are not ambiguous, but have smokers frequently who make the park space much less, really impossible for other park users to use the adjacent space. One of the things that our community member mentioned to me is that with the coronavirus situation now where you need to distance and wear masks, smokers are sitting on benches on the peripheries of the perimeters of parks. They're obviously not wearing masks. They make it very hard for anybody to distance around them. But this is not just about the coronavirus situation, although it has certainly exacerbated the crowding in our parks and the crowding on the sidewalks at the edges of our parks. But also about just increasing consciousness of the dangers of secondhand smoke, increasing public use of our parks in general, now concern, and this is in the resolution as well, that the statute as written doesn't address marijuana. It talks about tobacco products. And now as the legal landscape on the all aspects of marijuana is changing, one thing this does is asks to have marijuana explicitly prohibited in the same way and in the same manner as in our parks. This is just about parks. It's not about other public space at this point, as tobacco products. Mark, I think that's my intro, and I guess what we should do, what I'd like to do actually is if this is all right with you, Elizabeth, I'd like to turn to Janice Horowitz, who's the member of the public who had actually kind of precipitated this. Is that all right? And then we can turn to committee discussion.
Yeah, I look forward to hearing from her. That'd be great.
Yeah. Okay. So Mark, if you can put on the draft resolution, but also what we want to do is to find Janice in our attendees. And Janice, if you're there, we're going to unmute you. How are we going to find Janice? She was there. Oh, Matt.
If while we're waiting for her, if Gail wants to join, I don't know if Gail wants to say a word or two, maybe.
Yeah, maybe we should hear anything Gail has to say
No,
first.
let Janice go ahead. I can
Okay.
wait. I'm fine.
All right, Janice, I saw Janice on the list here, and we
I
need to
promoted her to
unmute Matt
panelist.
Genrich. I mean, we need to make Matt a
Janice, you
participant.
should be unmuted.
You got her?
Oops. Can you
think
Find
guys,
her?
I'm here.
We hear you.
Guys
Okay,
see,
Janice.
can you hear?
Janice, you know, I gave a really brief sort of introduction, but as I said, I was really spurred on by your thoughts and your contact with
I
us.
need
So
you here.
we'd be delighted to hear you a little bit.
Okay, I'm not sure you can, just reassure me that you can hear me
We
because
can.
CAN, obviously. Okay,
yes.
because I can neither hear or see you. So I'm glad. I keep screaming for my husband, the techno whiz. Yes, and thank you so much for calling this meeting.
Go ahead. Janice? Have we lost her?
She can't hear you.
Not according to my my screen.
We're not muted, are we, Mark?
We are not.
What do we do?
I think you turn to Gail, and I will try to find Janice through email.
Okay. Although Gail, we hope you'll be with us for as many comments as you can, but we'd love to hear from you,
I'm
Gail.
fine, but I think, Mark, she indicated that she couldn't hear you. So Janice, maybe you want to keep trying. I don't want
Yeah, I
to.
think we just need to text her or like message her, which I can try to do right now. I think she's up.
Tell you what, I've got her phone number here, so why don't I do that while you run the meeting? How's that?
Okay. So I guess before we hear from Janice, which we hope will do shortly, what we typically do, and Elizabeth, if this is the way you want to do it tonight, is we first ask, well, we want to get the proposed, I mean, I drafted it quickly this afternoon, but I think it covered the bases. Like to get that on the screen. I did distribute it this afternoon, late this afternoon, you might call it early evening, to all committee members, but not to others. So like to be able to show the draft resolution, but also committee members may find it more convenient to look at the email that version that they had for the last hour or so. And I guess we should first plan on calling committee members who want to speak. And I'm looking at participants. It's in the wrong place on my screen. Panel, I guess panelists is what we're called.
Yeah, and I think again, I don't know if Gail, if you'd like to say a word or two now, or if we want to move it to other panelists for their comments, but
I can do it quickly if you want. So me to go, I can go very quickly.
It's
I
up
mean,
to you, Gail.
Yeah, I'll go very quickly because I can give a little context. The Smoke-Free Air Act was my bill. And we spent a great deal of time negotiating it, even though Mayor Bloomberg was supportive. There were lots of, smokers who objected, as you can imagine. And I remember one instance there was almost an example until I stopped it of having an area in the beach where you could smoke, which to me was just beyond disgusting. So that went away, but it was that kind of looking for ways to satisfy the smokers that I had to keep fighting. So the ones that are listed in your resolution are definitely the ones that were exceptions that I couldn't get rid of. The sidewalks near parks and public spaces. And this one was a big issue of pedestrian routes through any median or mall, which of course you mentioned in terms of the benches on Broadway.
Perfect.
And then we're not going to talk about the parking lots. Let me just talk about the areas near the parks and the issues of the medians. The problem is, who is the enforcer? And I couldn't find an enforcer for the medians. I was absolutely not able to do it. I mean, DOT said it's not them, Parks said it's not them, and that was one reason it got left out. The sidewalks along parks and so on, it would seem to me that might be parks. Don't forget, parks goes, as I understand it, you could correct me, Clary, goes to the actual end of the sidewalk in adjoining to a park. It's not DOT. But
That's correct.
But then it wasn't clear that parks would actually do the enforcement there. So I think one of the things you might want to hear and have some discussion about is who's going to do the enforcement. It's very clear in the park. It is the park. Whether there's enforcement or not is another story, but it is the Parks Department. There was this big thing in the median and the adjoining. Is it DOT or is it parks? And then at the end, I just, you're trying to pass a bill, and I gave up. So that's the honest history of where we ended up. Now, I hate smoking. The less, the better. I would be happy if we could get rid of it. There is, smoking near the parks, partly because people can't smoke in the parks, and I think they know that. And so they do pick areas right next door. And so I think it would be, excellent, but I do think we need to think about who's going to be the regulator. I suppose it's supposed to be parks, but you have to see if they would even pretend to be the enforcers, let alone be the enforcers. So that's what I remember. And I think that's where, between the Conservancy, the Parks Department, and at least having a conversation with DOT, I don't think it's, in today's world, I don't think it's going to be NYPD. Or maybe it could, it's not going to be NYPD.
Yeah.
So that's what I would consider. I spend all my time trying to figure out between the sheriff, the mayor's office of special enforcement, fire department, buildings department, and nightlife and so on, who's in charge of the restaurants. So I think in this case, we need to figure out who's actually going to do the enforcement, if anybody. And if that doesn't matter, then that's a different issue. But that's where I got stuck. But
Gail,
thank you for asking.
Gail, thanks very much. That background is extremely helpful, and you did very well for us and for our parks users at the time to get it passed at all. In terms of enforcement, as I said, it's pretty clear, and even the Parks Department website says they expect citizens for the most part to do enforcement, but most park users, even presumably most smokers, if they know if there's no smoking, they're not going to do it. There are always going to be some violators, as we know from other types of illegal activities we've talked about recently. But for the most part, if the law is clear, presumably people will comply, including smokers.
I know, but Clara, when they call 311, who is supposed to answer?
Presumably PEP is, but that's my educated guess, Gail.
Okay.
But in the real world, are they going to? Probably not. But I guess the reason that I know, as spurred by Janice, and if we can get her back, I see her picture.
She is back.
She's back. The reason that I was pushing for this tonight is, and Janice will talk about some of these reasons too, is those exceptions which were necessary to get the law passed in 2011, I think it was. Times have changed. There's more and more concern about secondhand smoking. We've now got coronavirus social distancing and masks, and smokers who are on what is clearly our park sidewalks. It's one thing to smoke on Fifth Avenue or Riverside Drive on the opposite sidewalk, but it's another to be on a park bench in what's clearly a park on a park sidewalk, and our medians, and for that matter, our parking lots, which are the three exceptions there. And then there's the marijuana issue that is also addressed here, because it's not a tobacco product, but it ought to be treated in the same way. So talking to Janice and then looking at this and researching it, at least it's my view, but this is for us all to discuss tonight, that it's time for those exceptions to go. But Janice, do we have you on audio now? I have just.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we do. Can you hear us?
Thank you. So here's the thing. I missed what you said, Gail Brewer. So I hope I'm not redundant. And I know you were talking about enforcement, and I can come back to that because I have personal experience with the NCOs who were anxious to enforce. And then some of the park people also were very helpful, but then they told me it was actually legal to smoke. But I'm just going to go back, and forgive me for not hearing the beginning while I was working through all this technical stuff. So the upshot is, as I did hear, everybody agrees secondhand smoke is bad for you. That's why it was banned on park land, in restaurants, outdoor buildings, on your way into an office building. So as you know, I believe we understand that there were certain exceptions made 10 years ago, And that included the edges of the park that we call the park perimeters. But those perimeters or edges happen right now more than ever, are being used a lot, an increased use during the time of COVID. So here is why it's critical right now to rectify or get rid of those exceptions during the time of COVID. And honestly, it's very, very simple. And that is, in order to smoke, people remove their masks, period. And they sit on the benches for a long time without masks. When other people want to use the parkland, our seniors want to sit on the benches under trees, mothers with strollers want to sit on those benches, kids who want to bounce a ball, anybody who wants to hang out on their park has to deal with people who aren't wearing masks because they're smoking. So kind of as a result, these edges, this parkland that you really go to presuming and hoping that it's a less risky area for COVID, it's less congested, ends up actually being a greater risk. Because again, smokers are sitting for a long time, for hours, without their masks on. And essentially the result is the rest of us who want to sit there are disenfranchised from our park, from the park. So there are other reasons, and that is secondhand smoke poses health problems that today have a direct impact on COVID. And this has actually been known for decades. I wrote about this at Time magazine when I covered health, that secondhand smoke renders the lungs of the non-smoker more vulnerable to viral infections. So years ago, that virus could have been anything, but today that virus means COVID. So what happens is if you go out on this park land, the edges of the park, and sit on the benches, you're getting a double whammy. So the first part of that is that you're being exposed to secondhand smoke, which actually increases your risk of COVID. And the second part is those hazards are compounded because smokers aren't wearing masks for hours. So that's why I don't know who else managed to get on, but a lot of people were interested. And that's why we're hoping that these exceptions can kind of go away so people can enjoy the parkland.
Janice, thank you. And we have 29 people listed as attendees. Some of them are names that I recognize because they join us frequently. Many of them may be people who you have done outreach with, because many of them are not familiar names. Mark, did we promote Matt Genrich to participant, to panelist rather? But he's a parks guy. So we have lots of, a number of members of the public. It looks like maybe 20 or so. Some of them, Janice, may be people that you have helped us publicize this to. So is that what you wanted to say, Janice? If so, we'll move on to other discussion.
Yeah, well, this has the backing, and maybe Ellen Kessler and Batya Luton, you can acknowledge them because they represent groups that are behind this. One being the West 80s Neighborhood Association, and then Batya's group and for Livable New York, who I guess you know. And then we have somebody from the church on 86th in Amsterdam. Forgive me, Susan, I don't know your last name, but Susan. So we've got some, groups behind this too.
Okay, thanks, Janice. And we will be calling on, give a chance to speak to anybody in the community who has signed on as an attendee. So the people you mentioned or anybody else in the community will have a chance to speak. Just one other thing I forgot to say as I was doing an intro here, and that is I did speak this week with the CEO and president of the Riverside Park Conservancy, Dan Garodnick. What?
I was just repeating his name, that's all.
Oh, Dan, yes, Dan Garodnick, who authorized me to say that he couldn't join us tonight, but we had a good discussion, and he authorized me to say that the Riverside Park Conservancy in a general way supports, and we really were focusing on the perimeter issues in our conversation, supports eliminating the exception for smoking on the perimeters of Riverside Park, so that the entirety of the parkland, we were not talking about the parking lots, would not be exempt. The whole footprint of the park would be included, and he authorized me to say they support that. Let's look, I suppose, as we normally do, to people from the committee who want to speak.
Actually, Clary, if there are people from, I maybe a question or two from the committee, but I think because
Sure.
we have so many people from the
Okay, want to do it the other way around? Fine.
I mean, Ken, if your question is quick, I think you're the only one with your hand raised right now.
I had a comment on the resolution, not a question.
Okay, so maybe we go to the committee then, or the community then, and then come back.
That's fine. Let's look at the community and see how the same thing happened to me at the last meeting, Elizabeth and Mark. I am not sure I am seeing hands up, or ability to see the hands up. How do people do that? Because I'm not seeing.
So go ahead, Elizabeth.
I was just going to say, I think they can raise, they can go into the Q&A function and raise their hands.
Not the Q&A.
Or, sorry, the chat.
If they go
or the
into,
participants.
That's the one.
Sorry. The participants function, raise your hand. I think there are a few people. There might not be, but we do have a lot of attendees at this meeting. So we wanted to make sure you had a chance to ask a question if you have one.
Or make a comment.
Right.
Including the people Janice mentioned, but Elizabeth and Mark, I'm not seeing that on my list, but I think that's because of how I'm doing something wrong. So are you seeing?
Okay, so I'm seeing in the chat, someone saying, where's the, and Paul Fisher joined us, great. A participants function. So if you bring your cursor down to the bottom of the screen, on most computers anyway, then there'll be a pop-up series of buttons, one of which is participants. If you click on that, then you'll get a list of panelists and a list of attendees. You can toggle back and forth. And in that list of participants is the ability to raise your little blue hand.
So I see Ellen Kessler. I see Ellen Kessler with her hand raised.
Okay, at least we have one. So we think we're getting the mechanics working here. Should we call? Let's call on Ellen Kessler and hope then that other members of the public will raise their hands. Doug, we've sort of decided to wait with committee members until we've heard the public, if that's okay. Doug McGowan is a member. Okay, Ellen Kessler, I'm going to click allow to talk. That should unmute Ellen. Is that right, Mark and Elizabeth?
I think I unmuted myself.
Good. Okay, we got you.
You're good.
For anyone who's using an iPad, the little raise hand icon is on the top right when I'm holding it in landscape. So hi, everyone. I'm Ellen Kessler. I'm on the board of the West 80s Neighborhood Association. We've been around and we work with Gail and with WEPS when we were trying to landmark the neighborhood. And we totally support this. We think it's long overdue for all the reasons that you guys and Janice have mentioned. I've been working with Janice to help her do outreach. And I think it's very clear what the dangers of secondhand smoke are. And if we have any remedies at all, even with a lack of enforcement, I think we should go for it. So thank you.
Thank
you
you,
very much.
Ellen. And thank you for your association having you here tonight. Who else from the public? Janice mentioned a number of people. Mark, Elizabeth, do we see hands up?
I don't actually, but just this is the time to ask your questions. Otherwise, we'll turn it over to the committee.
Or make your comments.
Yeah, comments too.
May I talk about the enforcement thing? I really missed the whole beginning, but my vague understanding is that there's concern about enforcement. And in the park, I go to Riverside Park all the time, you don't see people smoking. So even if there isn't, somebody out there specifically enforcing, it's understood. I really don't see people smoking, and I'm there all the time. I had initially asked the NCO from the 20th precinct about enforcing not a smoking ban on the perimeters. And that's when I learned it actually was legal. They were quite, and I know it's a different era now, but they were, he and his colleagues were quite eager to help. They spent a week trying to figure out whether it was legal or not. So they were, you know, accommodating to this. And I also spoke to the park ranger who said she would enforce it, but she thought that it was legal to smoke on the perimeters. So my feeling is, you know, you can almost say that about everything, you know, who's going to enforce it? That, you know, you need the law there, and then you can maybe work through the mechanics of being sure it's enforced. And my sense is that it's enforced in Riverside Park for sure.
Thanks, Janice. Yeah, I mean, as I was saying a little while ago after Gail spoke, although there are always going to be some people, whether it's this law or another one, who are going to violate it, in general, that I think has been my observation in both Riverside and Central Park, that people, for the most part, know that smoking is not allowed throughout the park, where in those except at the perimeters, and they obey that. And if the law then is extended to no longer exclude the perimeters, and as we've drafted here, the parking lots and the malls as well, you're going to get, one would predict, a pretty high degree of compliance, voluntary compliance, with always some outliers. And then that's an issue on any statute, really. I'm disappointed that we don't have more members of the public who'd like to speak, but let's see, are we finding any more?
Why don't you speak? No? Okay.
Do we, Mark, Elizabeth, do we see any others?
Yeah, I don't see anyone. So unless, you know, we'd really love to have anyone. Oh, Ken, I think Ken has a comment.
So we're going, I guess we'll turn to committee members.
No, Ken Chaya.
Oh, Ken Chaya. Oh, sure, great. Ken Chaya? Have we unmuted Ken?
We're going to give you a slow count of 3 and then we're going to move on. So are you?
Trying to find him.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think he's been unmuted.
There he is.
He's unmuted.
I've unmuted him too.
Okay, I'm unmuted now. Hi, everybody. Thank you.
Hi, Ken.
Hi.
Yeah.
I hope everyone is well and staying healthy. I'm trying to stay healthy too, and smoking interferes with that process. I wasn't aware that people were legally allowed to smoke on the park perimeter. So just attending this meeting has taught me something that I didn't know before. My problem is that I'm still seeing so many people in the park smoking, and that interferes. That really interferes with my rights. That interferes with my health. That's an imposition on me. I don't care if people want to smoke. That's their business. But smoking should be their problem, not mine, or yours, or anyone else that wants to use an entrance to the park or enjoy the fresh air in the park. So I would just love to see a resolution come out of this that in some way affects greater enforcement on the benefits of public health and safety. Thank you very much.
Ken, when you mentioned the park, you were talking about Central Park, is that right?
I was talking primarily, yes, about Central Park. Thank you
Shelley,
for that clarification. But I go to Inwood Hill Park and I go to Riverside Park, but Central Park with the vast numbers of people, and sometimes it's, you know, it's simply an out-of-towner. It's someone from Europe, a tourist, and I've spoken to them, and many times they're very understanding and accommodating. It's the locals who just feel that it's their park and they have a right to smoke in it. And that's really unfortunate and selfish.
Ken, I've done the same thing with some of the tourists, but you're right. There are some outliers who don't obey. Shelley, I see your hand, but I also saw
Karen DeMoss is also waiting.
Yeah, we want to get the public, and I think a couple more have come up. Karen DeMoss is unmuted, right? Karen DeMoss.
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Wonderful. I live at 170 West End Avenue and heard about this meeting, heard about the proposal, and I'm just here to say, rah, rah, thank you. Yes, please, let's do it.
We like to have an appreciative public.
Excellent. Thank you. Get on our website, follow us on Twitter. We'd love to have you stay involved with Community Board 7.
Absolutely. I thought I saw Sam Vassallo as a community member, but now I can't find him. Hand is not up though. I see him in chat.
Jan Alexander, I think, has raised her hand or his hand.
Great.
Jan.
Let's find Jan Alexander. Have you found her and is it a she and unmuted?
I've allowed to talk. So whoever, if Jan, if you're there.
Okay. Yes. Can you hear me? I just unmuted my mic.
Great. Excellent.
Okay.
Welcome,
Yeah.
Jan.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I'm an Upper West Side resident. All right. I'm on a conference. Just a minute. I'm an Upper West Side resident, and I just want to say I support the resolution. That's really, we depend on being able to go outside for health reasons now, especially. So with New York being a model of public health cooperation for the rest of the country, this is really the time to ban smoking in all public areas.
Are you fucking kidding with this smoking shit? Fucking crap off of.
We're getting Zoom bombed.
Don't know who that was, but all of you, please, who are not speaking, please mute.
There you go.
Yeah, I think maybe we'll take what she wanted and move on unless she can join us back. So
thank you.
All right. Any other members of the public who are listening?
Larry, I just want to let you know that's the kind of comment I got when I passed my bill.
Well, Gail, again, thank you for doing it.
Yes.
And thanks for staying and listening, because this is starting to coalesce in a way I'm happy about, but we're not there yet. So let's see.
It's even dividing households.
Yeah, right. Clearly so. I told my husband to just leave the room, but he would have agreed. I can tell you my husband would support this. Any other, again, I'm going up and down the list. I don't see any hands up among community members. Elizabeth, Mark, do you?
No, I think we're good. So we can
All
move
right,
on
so
to.
in the order in which we saw them, we're going to have Ken Coughlin, Doug McGowan. I think Shelley was second and Doug was third. It doesn't matter. We'll get there. Ken.
Okay. First of all, I'm
committee member.
I'm going to join the chorus to thank Gail for championing this very important legislation. I remember when it was passed, and I was absolutely delighted. And I would wholeheartedly support closing the loopholes for tobacco smoke. I think it's very important that we take it right to the edge of the park and not have these exceptions. But I do question why we're lumping in marijuana. The science is very clear that tobacco, secondhand smoke and direct tobacco smoke causes lung cancer. As far as I know, there's no science to support the same for marijuana. Marijuana is already illegal, as far as I know, so we're just sort of adding illegality onto illegality, which I hope will change. But I don't think it's a huge problem. I don't know. The original law was about tobacco, and I don't think we should be tinkering with the original law. I think we should just try to expand the original law's purview.
And you are correct, and that's, I also marked put on the screen earlier, the original, the existing law speaks to the use of various uses of tobacco. That is correct. That's what it governs. Let's go to Doug and Shelley in either order. Shelley, you want to go next?
Okay.
You are unmuted.
Thank you. I'm all for extending the ban of Gail's original law to the perimeter, particularly because of the dangers of secondary smoke. And I'd like to add that maybe we should have some type of, since we can't guarantee enforcement, at least some type of penalty in a sign that says no smoking is the law at these sites, and also to have some type of fine to at least give it some weight, not just be a sign. So I would certainly I encourage adding something about letting people know by signage.
Shelley, let me address that quickly. I would regard as a friendly amendment, and I would ask Elizabeth because she's the co-chair, but I would regard as a friendly amendment putting in a phrase asking for signage around the perimeters of parks. You know, you can't have a zillion signs all at once because we got a lot of parks and a lot of perimeters, but I think it's a friendly amendment to ask for signage informing the public that smoking is prohibited anywhere within the parks if that's where we go. With
Great.
regard to penalties, there is a penalty in the law. I don't recall what it is. Perhaps Gail recalls what it is. You don't need for the council to create a penalty. You may not think it's high enough, but it's not as if there are no penalties in the law. It's just that in the real world, nobody much ever pays
My
them.
main concern is for the signage.
Yeah, and Elizabeth, is that a friendly amendment?
That's great. It's fine. Yeah.
Okay, it's a very good suggestion.
Thank you.
I want to get back to Ken's marijuana point, but let's hear everybody else first. We had Doug McGowan.
Hey, thanks, Clary. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Perfect. I'd like to join the chorus thanking Manhattan Borough President and also second Ken's comment about supporting this for tobacco smoke and use in those adjacent areas, but am concerned about the addition of marijuana. So in addition to the comment that Ken mentioned, marijuana is increasingly prescribed as a solution to a number of ailments, to include here in New York State. It's different than tobacco smoke, as marijuana is prescribed as a solution. So in fact, as per a number of recent set of bills signed into law by the governor, marijuana is now prescribed for ailments to include post-traumatic stress disorder. It is prescribed for post-traumatic stress disorder because a number of veterans organizations sought to include this as a treatment for post-traumatic stress. So in the discussion, there's been a discussion about how COVID, in this particular environment with COVID, there is an increased need to pass a piece of this resolution related to tobacco. But I would interject and argue that we will likely see increased post-traumatic stress from this COVID crisis here in New York, and to limit the ability of individuals to consider as an option for post-traumatic stress, the use of marijuana may or may not be a good thing. Many individuals in New York are unable to smoke as it is in their buildings, whether it be in their co-ops or their rented homes, and look to smoke, whether it be tobacco or whatever else outside. So we would be limiting not only the location, but also we would, as PTSD increases, we would be getting in between an individual and their right to seek treatment for the ailment caused by, in this case, the COVID. So I wouldn't support the resolution as written with the addition of the language for marijuana.
Okay, I'm going to want to say something more about that, but let's hear from other people first. We had Shelley, we had Doug, we had Ken. Do we have other committee
Natasha?
members?
I think Natasha has her hand raised.
Natasha and then Barbara Adler.
Hi. Yeah, I was wondering, somebody, I think it was Janice, who mentioned the NCOs who were very supportive. Do we have any more NCOs in our district? My understanding was that they no longer exist. So coming back to the enforcement question, I'm wondering if NCOs actually exist anymore or not in our district. I also want to piggyback on what Shelley was saying about signage, but I would say not just on the perimeters of the parks, but actually even within the parks. Just since the pandemic began, as everybody will agree, there's been a lot more usage of all the parks all over the city. And a lot more people who've never used the park have no idea what the rules are, whether they're locals or I'm sure there aren't too many tourists around these days. But in terms of the trash they leave behind, which you can see as even just a casual observer, you know, there is a lot of, you can smell the smoke, whether it's marijuana or just tobacco. And you can even see that in the trash, which is overflowing. So I think additional signage all over would be very helpful, whether it's about tobacco usage or marijuana, whatever it is. I think that would be very helpful. And also, I thought recreational use of marijuana was about to become legal in New York State imminently. So it's not just about PTSD and medical use, but I'm expecting even recreational use to increase soon. So as a result, I think it is important to put that in the resolution, and I would support including marijuana in there as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Natasha. In terms of this, your signage point, while it's really hard to get signage, it's hard enough to get signage on the periphery of parks, much less inside parks. But I think that your observation and your request is probably consistent with the friendly amendment that we've already accepted about signage. Barbara Adler? Is Barbara mute?
Yes, I
You're on
think,
mute.
can you
Okay.
hear me?
Yeah.
Oh. Okay. I completely agree with this resolution. And I think it's a no-brainer. I can't imagine that anybody would be opposed to it. Certainly nobody who has spoken here tonight has been opposed to it. The only question is enforcement and how to get this enforced. But this affects our health, which makes it extremely important to us. And it seems to me that this is a time when, Gail, forgive me, you do use the NYPD to do some enforcement here. I think it's very important. And also, Doug, people who are smoking marijuana are also doing it without a mask. And so that also affects our health. I did want to say that I'm not home now. I'm somewhere else, and it's a small town, and there's a main street that's lined with benches, and on every single bench, it says, "This bench is reserved for people who are wearing masks. You must wear a mask to sit on this bench." So I thought that was something that we might consider doing as well. That's all.
Okay, do we have other members of the committee or board members, other panelists, I guess is the expression? Elizabeth, yourself or Mark, or we haven't heard.
I think the issue about the marijuana is an important one. And I'll admit these comments tonight have been very thought-provoking about how we address it. I think it's a bigger issue given, I think as of June, the governor had not yet made it recreational use legal. So I don't know if that impacts people's decisions on this resolution per se, but I do think it's something we need to figure out tonight if we want to include or not include.
Okay, are there other, I want to get, again, I want to say another couple words on that, but first, Janice, do you want to say something more? Janice, do we need to unmute Janice again?
Yeah, I'm so primarily focused on tobacco, but I do want to just interject this. Tobacco is also legal. And the question, in my opinion, about whether marijuana is harmful to your health, and forgive me, but it's really, there aren't studies yet. It's going to take a long time to know. But I just thought I would say that, you know, tobacco is legal. So once marijuana becomes legal, it's just on the same plane. And again, for me, the issue is masks. I just wanted to raise this, that there is a council member, and I don't want to confuse matters, in Queens named Peter Koo, K-O-O, who has proposed some legislation to ban smoking everywhere outside. It's very extreme, but I just thought kind of people should know about that's been out there, I think, for about a year.
Janice, that's a good point. And, you know, one thing I just included as a sort of in the preamble to the resolution is that New York is really rethinking a lot. I mean, partly spurred by the coronavirus, but partly this was going on before. how our public space is used, and it's sidewalks and street beds and parking lanes and parking lots and plazas and all of those areas of public space. And we're not tonight going to be addressing the much broader issue of smoking in all of our public space. We're focused here on our parks, because that's what this committee does.
Yeah, and Clary, I would just, not to interrupt you,
picture.
but I will for just 1 second, is that it also would be something that we would need to bring before the HHS committee as well.
Oh, sure.
We were going to do that.
Who, by the way, we invited to join us tonight.
Right.
We're not joined, but Shelley we sent Shelley and Catherine an invitation to share with their members, and we've got Shelley tonight, which is a great thing. If does anybody else want to speak? Because I want to get back shortly to the marijuana, and then we'll figure out how to vote, because we've had a very focused discussion, which is great. On the marijuana thing, I think it belongs in the resolution, and I'll tell you briefly why. This isn't about whether marijuana may have beneficial medical effects. It's not about whether you can eat for that matter, eat marijuana brownies in the in parks or otherwise. It's not about whether you can use marijuana in any form, anywhere, in homes or on other public areas that are not part of our parks. It's only about smoking marijuana in our parks. And marijuana smoke is as offensive to many, certainly to me, but I know to many other people, it's as immediately offensive to get that smell and be close to it as is tobacco smoke. So I think it's a misunderstanding to think that this resolution is in any way intended to suggest that it not be fully available, if it otherwise is, for medical use, for having in brownies, for having on Fifth Avenue, but not on the one side of the street, but not in Central Park, not in Riverside Park, not in our other parks. That's all it's about with the marijuana. It's not in any way addressed to any other finding, any other suggestion, any other limit with regard to marijuana. It's just, as written, makes marijuana equal, or asks the council to make it equal to tobacco products in terms of protecting our park users who don't want it in our parks. How are we going to go about this now? Let's have one other chance for either attendees or participants, because we have a very concise meeting tonight, either panelists or attendees who want to say anything. And Elizabeth, here's what I'm going to suggest.
It looks like Doug has a comment, and anyone else, if you could mute your phone.
Sure, of course.
If you could mute yourself if you're not speaking, that would be great.
Yeah.
Clary, this is Doug. So I take it from the comment that you wouldn't accept a friendly amendment to the resolution to strike the language, the addition of marijuana, and to focus on tobacco. Is that the case? Or
Doug, that is not, in my view, a friendly amendment, but when we finish the discussion, I think Matt may have had his hand up. I'm going to suggest a way that we can vote that separates that out, so we can do a separate vote on that. And then that I think will, because we've heard some people that don't want it in, we've heard some people that do want it in. Okay. So Matt Gemrich, did you have your hand up, or did I?
Yeah, I'm just here to listen.
Who you are, Matt.
My name is Matt Ginrich. I'm the district park manager for Community Board 7. I'm just here to listen tonight and report back to our agency. I just wanted to clarify. So my understanding of no smoking in parks is currently, as it stands, is any substance. Whether that's hookah, marijuana, or tobacco, or even vaping. When it says no smoking, it's no smoking of any substance in a park. So that's, Matt, I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you. I know that the law was amended, and maybe Gail can help us on this. The law was certainly amended to include vaping a few years ago. When I picked out, I'm a lawyer, but defining this stuff and researching it is not my specialty. And when I looked at it today, it talked about tobacco. What I picked out and quoted might not be up to date. I thought I had seen something that included any substance a few days ago, but I couldn't find it again. Does anybody have a better handle on that? And Matt may be right, in which case we don't need to talk about marijuana, but Gail, do you know? I think she's mute.
It's just called smoke free.
That's the name of the act.
Yeah, but I think it's
the definition that I picked out today, but I'm not sure it's up to date.
And
of smoking refers to tobacco use, but I'm not sure that's up to date. Matt may be right. I hope he's right.
Clary, I'm going to see if Erica Overton is with us, because there was a state bill that addressed vaping. I don't recall, and maybe there's Erica. Erica, I hope you're unmuted. Erica, I know that Assembly Member Linda Rosenthal led an effort to include vaping in various non-smoking restrictions. Do you know if that applies to New York City parks as well, or is it only a state thing?
I don't know. I'd have to find out for you. I could text them right now. Yeah.
I'm checking right now to see if
it looks like okay, and Cindy has her hand up. Maybe she's got an answer.
Yeah, I'm on the New York City govparks.org, and it says, do you want to know about electronic cigarettes?
Yeah, that is.
As of April 29, 2014, the City Council approved legislation to include electronic cigarettes in the Smoke-Free Air Act.
Right.
No one is allowed to use an e-cigarette where smoking is prohibited.
I had seen that and sort of incorporated that in my thinking that all types of tobacco, including vaping. But
it doesn't say tobacco on this site. It just says smoking.
Oh, but how is smoking defined?
I'm just on the site. It's not the legislation.
Okay.
So
right.
I'll keep looking.
I saw that as well. Because in the statutes, in the administrative code that I saw today, if it is up to date, defined it as smoking. But is somebody else doing any fast research here?
Yeah, we're all fine.
Let me suggest then that we do this. That we first vote on the resolution without the paragraph that talks about, it's the one of the introductory paragraphs, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that starts out with the changing landscapes and talks about cannabis, okay? I'm going to suggest that we first vote on the resolution minus that 6th whereas equivalent, and minus the second paragraph that talks about extending prohibitions to marijuana.
If that, with the changing landscape of cannabis, that's the one?
Well, yeah, provisionally, don't cross it out yet or whatever, Mark, or yeah, you can highlight it. And also then highlight the second, as we say in a legal biz, decretal paragraph. It looks like we've lost, or actually you've got one of them, as I'm seeing it now, one of them you've made bold and the other you've got highlighted at the moment.
They're both bold, I think. Oh.
Okay, so if this is all right with Elizabeth and with Mark, what we would be doing is voting on the resolution, committee members and then non-committee board members without these 2 paragraphs. If the resolution passes, we would then, if this procedure makes sense to our folks other than me, we would then have a separate vote on adding those 2 back in. If it turns out that we've missed something, and I would take the blame for that, and Matt is correct, that marijuana is already within the ban, then we won't have done any harm. Or if we find that out, I suppose we could later just take them out. But that gives people who have the opposing opinions on the marijuana issue, but otherwise support the resolution, the chance to support the resolution without it, and then to see whether we add those 2 back in. Does that work for Elizabeth and Mark?
Sure.
Elizabeth? Yep. Okay, Elizabeth, I just got some kind of message from you. Did Ken want to say something again, or nope?
No.
Anybody?
Your hand raised. Unraise your hand.
Last
Right.
chance.
Thanks. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Last chance for attendees or participants or panelists.
I think Doug has his hand
Kleiman.
up.
Suddenly, I see Doug Kleiman.
So I just wanted to say that I supported the resolution in its initial incarnation, and I'm very sensitive to and to the benefits of marijuana and legalization of marijuana. But as a practical matter, I do not want to see people smoking at the perimeter of parks because it's the smoke issue. It's not, and it is offensive to some. And I just, I'm very concerned about that. I've seen it. People are taking advantage, and there's always the outliers anyway. And if it's particularly allowed, then we have that problem. In terms of cannabis, I don't think that we're restricting people's rights to take their medicine, and they don't need to. There are different forms to ingest cannabis, and they could actually ingest cannabis in the park legally if it's just not for smoking. Anyway, it's just at the very least it's a nuisance, but at its extreme, it's more problematic. And remember, there's children coming in and out of parks, and I'm not saying it's going to harm anyone detrimentally, but if you have a toddler and they're breathing in marijuana, that's not what you want. So anyway, I've said my piece, but we'll vote.
Thank you, Doug. So then you will presumably vote yes on both votes, but we'll see what happens. So Ken has his hand up again.
Yeah, sorry. Since Doug spoke on it, I thought I would. I'm just not sure we should be making law based on what some people consider offensive. I happen to find the smell of marijuana smoke very appealing, and that's not because I smoke. I don't, but I just like it. So I just don't think we should be making law and changing law based on what people's idiosyncrasies are. That doesn't seem like a good basis at all.
Well, Ken, the mere smell makes me sick, but that's 1 and 1 on that one. So
if I could just add, I think whoever made the comment that this was about the smoke itself is what we're really voting on tonight, and where that comes from, whether it's a tobacco cigarette or marijuana, is really what we want to keep out of parks for the quality of life of the majority of residents. I think that's what we're thinking about here.
Yep, I agree. Well said, Elizabeth. Are we ready to do our vote? Mark, Elizabeth, do we see any other hands?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, so what we're gonna do, and Mark, I guess we'll do this as, Mark, you're gonna take a roll call vote, right?
Clary, just to clarify, so this is without those two paragraphs?
Yeah, the first vote we're gonna take, first committee members, then non-committee board members. We're gonna take it for yes or no on the resolution, or abstain on the resolution minus those two paragraphs. If it passes, then we'll take a second vote on whether to put those two paragraphs back in. Okay. Everybody with us on that?
So the way we're going to do this one is, please, so for Parks and Environment Committee members, please, voting yes, please use the raise hand function if you're able. If you're not, raise your physical hand. So please do that now.
Okay,
Voting yes.
This is committee members in favor of the resolution, currently
right.
minus
Clary and Elizabeth have to raise their hand physically. Yeah. So I see 2 plus 4. And that's
Mark,
all I see.
I'm a raised hand. I can't raise it on the.
Got it. Okay, so okay. I have 3 plus 4 is 7 in favor. Okay.
That's all the committee members in favor. Then we are 7 in number.
Yep. Okay. Well, let me just go through.
Sure.
Hands down. Anybody opposed? I don't see. Anybody abstaining? I don't see, and there's nobody who's ineligible for cause. Now we'll go non-committee board members in favor. That would include me, so I'm raising my hand. Doug, are you not a board member, a committee member?
Talking about Doug Clyman?
Yeah.
I am a non-committee member of Parks and Environment.
Okay, and you're voting yes. Okay, so I have 1, 2, Shelley is 3, Barbara is 4. Anybody else?
Are you voting, Mark?
I already included myself.
So it's Barbara, Mark, Doug, and
Shelley.
Shelley.
Is
okay,
4.
Okay, great.
Anybody, thank you there. So hands down, anybody opposed? I think that's everybody, but anybody opposed? I'll go through. Oh, Paul Fisher. Paul, can you put your vote in the chat? I know sometimes you can't be heard. All right, I propose that we give Paul Fisher a chance to vote. Paul votes yes, there it is. And with your permission, I will record that vote. So that's, what was it? 1, 2, 3, 4, that's 5, right? That's 5 in favor. Nobody opposed, nobody abstaining, nobody ineligible. So the resolution carries, looks like 7000 and 5000. Is that correct?
Okay, that's great. Now what we're going to do is take the second vote. However, just before we do that, I see in the comments and the chat rather that a couple of people have put in a link of various links to, I'm not sure what, to various legislation, something. Has anybody put in a link that answers the question to whether marijuana is now treated like tobacco currently, or whatever they've put in the links is not going to answer that? Karen DeMoss has put in a link. Can we listen to Karen again for a moment? Just in case she can tell us what she found. Karen, you're unmuted.
Okay. I believe that marijuana is not on the list because marijuana is not legal yet. So I'm pretty sure that that's why it's not there. Hookahs actually were added. So my hunch is that if marijuana became legal, it would be added as something that was being smoked. Of course, I'm not in people's minds,
but I think it would still take, we have to think conservatively, it would take the city council to do that. So, all right, let's stick with the plan. The plan is we will now take a second vote. Mark, if you'll put up the language again, if you would be so kind. Clearly the comments were split on this among committee members. So the next vote and our last vote will be whether to put in this resolution, in addition to what we've now all passed, putting back in the 2 paragraphs that are in yellow on your screen. Committee members in favor of adding those 2 paragraphs in. I'm going to put my hand up.
So I see Clary. Let's see. I have Clary, Natasha, and Cindy is 3.
And Elizabeth.
Elizabeth?
She's up.
Yeah, I don't know if this is friendly or too late, but perhaps removing the first of the 2 paragraphs might make it easier for people to accept it. I think imposing sort of a judgment on the marijuana use to me is a little, I'll still vote for it, but I think that it sounds a little, like we're not scientists.
Elizabeth, I mean, let's just talk about it for just a minute. I don't think it's too late. We're not pressed for time tonight and we're moving along. The reason I put that in is otherwise the clause asking for having it added to the legislation would sort of come from nowhere. I guess it would have the same force and effect. So if passed, I mean, our resolution would still be asking for the same thing, but I'd put in the first of those 2 yellow paragraphs because it kind of gave the background, but I don't.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there's a way to say that sort of all of the legally or sort of illegal forms of smoke in our city right now, which include marijuana, we can include that, smoke, anything else be listed rather than do sort of a separate paragraph. I mean, it just seems like it's overly focused on cannabis and marijuana, which is not, I think, something we want this to reflect. We're not here to judge on marijuana use. We're here to judge on the fact that people don't like smoke in the parks, and whether it's coming from marijuana or a vape or a cigarette, is to me irrelevant. It's all things that are things that obstruct the quality of life in our neighborhood. And, again, I think if there's a way we cannot indict one form of smoking over another or one form of sort of ingestion of smoke over another, it just seems we're going.
Elizabeth, I understand your point. All other forms, I think, are already included with the tobacco and the vaping. I mean, marijuana is the outlier at this point. I'm not sure there's anything else. I mean, I guess you could smoke twigs or something, or.
Well, we don't really say, do we say it earlier in the resolution? I should look, but like.
Say what?
Do we specifically reference all the, the Smoke-Free Air Act, I think implicitly includes everything that's smokable, right? Right now?
No, to the contrary. The definition is tobacco.
Right, but I think there's maybe a simpler way to.
Well, two things. One, we already have 4 votes out of 7 for putting the 2 paragraphs back in. So I'm not sure we want to fuss, but I'm willing
That's
to
fine.
fuss.
That's fine. I just think, again, I think the optics make it look a little bit like we're singling out people, like this came to us because we were thinking about people using marijuana. That's not the reason this came to us.
It's certainly the reason it came to me, but anyway, Mark has a comment, and I'm willing to fuss if we think it's worthwhile fussing, although I do think we have a vote on this at least, maybe more. Mark?
Clary, I just wanted to say that I agree with Elizabeth's suggestion of taking out that first paragraph, the first highlighted paragraph, and keeping the second highlighted paragraph in.
Okay, I mean, I could consider that a friendly amendment, or Elizabeth, did you want to?
Yeah, I would consider that friendly if it doesn't impact, you know.
Well, I don't think it impacts what we're asking for. I like, though, Elizabeth, your idea of having something that talks about wanting all smoking in the parks for the quality of life of our park users, all smoking. It doesn't have to use that. I'm not sure how we're going to say that, and maybe the committee would trust us to just come up with something simple that would say that, or we could try to do it right now. But I'm amenable to taking that out, and if we do, I would prefer to adopt something such as Elizabeth has suggested about all types of smoking
should not be in the park.
Should not be done in the parks.
Right. I think I hope everyone would agree with that.
Okay. And is everybody okay with our just refining that language later? We'll go on the assumption that this vote will take out this paragraph. We'll plan on adding a few words about all forms of smoking should be banned, and then we'll keep in the last one.
So Claire, So Clary, this is Doug. Although I appreciate the goal of creating a friendly amendment to remove that paragraph, and then perhaps get everyone to agree that they agree that there should be no smoking in the park. The comment was made that you can just use an edible. I understand that that's what's communicated and discussed as someone in the community, not as someone who uses, but somebody who's in the community of individuals who are dealing with post-traumatic stress. That type of solution is not applicable to all. And there are individuals who, in order to seek their treatment, do prefer a certain method. And for that reason, even with the friendly amendment, you'll see on this part for me, I'll be unable to vote in support.
Doug, we understand that, and we're not always unanimous, and that's why we have debate. But do understand that if we do adopt this second piece of this, it doesn't address smoking, any other form of marijuana use, smoking or anything else in your home, on the street, opposite the park, in the middle of the street, anywhere other than within our parks. So that's all we're talking about.
Yeah, and the issue with that is in most homes you are unable to smoke. So I understand.
Certainly you can't in mine, but that's, everybody does their own thing. So let's, Mark, if you don't mind putting it back on the resolution, so everybody knows what we're voting on, and
You've got some hands raised though.
What? Oh yeah, we got to do the hands. Okay, so what we're going to vote on is the resolution minus the first paragraph that talks about marijuana, but with the second one. And we'll add a little language about wanting all forms of smoking to be prohibited in our parks. We just don't have that phrase yet, but trust us if you will. So now
I think you still have hands raised. I don't know, are people raising their hands to vote, or are they wanting to comment?
I don't know. I don't know. If people want to talk, they can. Otherwise, we'll vote. Why are people raising their hands? I don't see any.
They all went away. Okay.
Okay. So now, Janice, we're done with public comment. And well, Elizabeth, let Janice say one more thing.
Just one little thing is, I see on the park perimeters, a lot of Montessori school. There's a yeshiva on 89th. I'm just throwing that in the time of COVID, I suspect those perimeters will be used much more, as there's a push to use outdoor space as much as you can if kids go back to school. So the marijuana thing may be part of that.
Thanks, Janet. That's a helpful comment. All right, the vote now on the marijuana part of this, that is taken out the first paragraph about marijuana, keeping in the final one and putting a little new language about no smoking anything in the parks. Let's now look for, I see Doug is sort of smiling.
Well, that's good.
Doug, welcome to Community Board 7.
This is Doug
I think
McGowan.
you-
I don't see Doug. Oh, Doug Kleiman, both are.
Larry, I think you managed the meeting very well, you and Elizabeth.
Both our Dougs are smiling tonight.
So all those in favor of the marijuana enhanced resolution, please raise your hand now. I
Committee
see.
members.
This is
I
committee
see-
only, is that correct?
Committee only
Committee
first.
first.
Thank you very much. So I see Clary, Elizabeth, Natasha, Cindy, and Susan that seems to be 5 to me.
Okay.
Did I miss anybody? I don't think so. Okay, hands down, please. Let's see.
Those committee members against adding the marijuana provision.
Correct. I've got 1, 2. Yep.
Who's the 2? Oh, I'm sorry.
Ken.
Ken, right.
And not yet, Barbara. And
5200 on that.
that's what I've got as well. And then, so non-committee board members, now's your chance. So I'm sorry, lower your hands. Let's see, lower. Okay. So now non-committee board members in favor of the marijuana provisions and amendments that you just heard in favor. I see Shelley, I see Doug is 2, Barbara is 3.
What
I
about you,
think that's
Barbara?
all. That's all I see. There were 5 before, weren't there?
You were one of them, I think.
I'm abstaining, so that I see 3 in favor.
Oh, Paul Fisher. Is Paul Fisher here
Oh,
with
Paul
us?
Fisher, that's right. Paul, can you?
I see yes for
think
Paul
he
Fisher
voted
in the
yes.
chat, but I'm
Paul
not sure.
voted
which
yes. So I
that
have
is.
4. So the non-committee will be 4010,
Okay, great.
and I will now put that into the document. Yep.
Okay, so Elizabeth and I will, Elizabeth, I volunteer to do this tomorrow, to just do the little editing that we need and then get it to Penny. Mark, I have another question for you now. It didn't occur to me until about half an hour ago. The next full board meeting is in September.
It is September 1st.
Yeah, and I think Janice in particular has made a very good case for why the crowding of our sidewalks during COVID times, which are certainly going to unfortunately likely continue through the fall, are a good reason to add the perimeters and perhaps the parking lots and the malls as well, because they're in there. Is it a possible procedure to have this resolution come before the steering committee, which happens to meet tomorrow night, or does that not work within our procedures?
If by your question you mean, can we circulate it as a position of Community Board 7 based on a steering committee vote, the answer is no.
Okay.
Our bylaws make that abundantly clear, and the chair of our bylaws task force is with us tonight. And if I'm misspeaking, I invite her to correct me, but I'm pretty confident of this one.
Well, I thought that was the
I would
case.
say that it was a policy in a previous era that if we weren't meeting, then steering would be able to vote.
But no longer.
And there are boards on Borough Board who take that position. The reason, as I understand it, and Shelley probably knows this better than me, is that once upon a time, the borough president's general counsel said that that's not kosher, that you can't do that. And so our board corrected itself, and I wonder at those other boards who have this other policy, but we're not going to be one of them on my watch.
Okay, so I would then just say one more thing on this topic, and I think we've done a good and efficient job on it tonight, and that is, fortunately, we have Julian Della Porta, who's representing Council Member Rosenthal with us. I don't think that Mark Levine's colleague, Eric Coelho, is that his name, ever made it on with us tonight. He was planning to. I never saw his name on the attendees. We've had Gail with us. So it's been a discussion that seems to have raised an issue that has not been in the consciousness of our city council until we raised it. There's Eric. Eric, I don't know when you joined us, so glad to see you. Can we unmute Eric for a minute?
I thought I did, but Eric appears to be at Yankee Stadium, so.
Can we get Eric?
Wait, let me know if you can see me now. Hey.
Eric, how much of our discussion have you heard?
I've been on since about 6:30. So.
Oh, well, that's when we started.
I've been
I
here
think we
from
just.
Sorry, buddy, we look for you. Sorry.
We would have unmuted you and invited you to participate throughout.
It's no problem.
Anyway, what I was saying is that I think the most important thing now is that Eric and Julian, who represent and are staff members of our local council members, have heard this discussion. They know that we strongly supported, and in fact unanimously, the basic resolution, with a majority also on the marijuana add-on. And so I'm hoping personally, because I don't speak for Community Board 7, but I'm hoping personally that they will take it back to their bosses and see whether, in light of all of these considerations, including the importance of making the most breathable space around everywhere in our parks during the COVID time, that they'll initiate something without waiting for our full board in September, because this is not something we can put into effect. It is asking the city council to do a law. And I hope that both of our reps, our council reps, have heard us loud and clear tonight. Anybody want to say anything more on this topic? Okay. Elizabeth, do you have anything else to turn to, or?
I think we're good.
Mark?
Thanks. With Matt still with us, I just received something, a constituent concern today. I'm wondering if Matt has heard about it and what the right way to try to address it would be. The playground on 89th Street apparently has folks using it well into the evening, well past the usual times. And apparently some of it can get rather noisy and raucous. Is that something we bring to your attention, or is that an NYPD thing? How do we try to engender better behavior without overdoing it?
Yeah, I'll report back to NYPD and PEP and our lockup crew as well, and see what's going on.
Thank you. That would be great. And let me be your point of contact on that if you need any follow-up, okay?
Mark, I'd like to ask a question about that particular complaint. Mark forwarded it to me and Elizabeth sometime late today in the afternoon, I think it was. What was not clear, Matt, I think that the email said that PEP had come twice, I believe, to that location. Question is, did they just warn the people, or did they issue any kind of summons? Because it sounds like the same people get warned, the PEP officers leave, and then the behavior starts all over again. The PEP officers come back, they do another warning, if that was the case, and then the same behavior starts. Is there any actual enforcement going on at this location?
I'm not aware of those particular instances when PEP was there, so it's something I'll have to look into.
Okay, thanks. Do we have anything else where we want to just? I have an update, and it's a good one.
Yeah, Clary, I know we have a couple community members who wanted to speak for a minute or two.
Sure.
Lisa being one of them.
Sure.
You know, I think Lisa, as long as it's germane to Parks and Environment, for a minute or two, if you want to talk about your work with Streetopia, I think that's great. Unless, yeah.
Sure.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So I just wanted to make sure that your committee saw our Central Park Advocates report and street films. For those who haven't, we are a group that kind of came together, actually, people that attended CB7 meetings and were interested in the park. We're all heavy park users, and some are longtime advocates like your very own Ken, and some are brand new activists, which has been really fun to hear their enthusiasm. We wrote this report and created a bunch of street films to highlight issues for park users and some solutions. And we'd love to hear your feedback as you read the report. I know, Clara, you said that you received it from us.
And I read it.
Okay, great. So at some point, we'd love to hear feedback from you and perhaps get on your agenda to discuss it further.
Sure.
Thanks, Lisa. I think a lot of us are active in supporting the park in various ways and various modes of transportation. So we really appreciate you presenting this to us tonight.
Thanks.
Yeah. It looks like Natasha has her hand up. Is that still from the vote or something else, Natasha?
Hi, yes, sorry, I do have my hand up. You know, this goes back to something that, you know, we discussed in the main agenda item, and also something that Peter Arnston also talked about, the fact that the parks, all the parks nowadays, since the pandemic started, they're obviously being very heavily used. We keep coming back to that, the same issue, and whether it's smoking or dog leash issues or anything else, but one other issue that is very obvious is the issue of trash and cleanup, because I guess usage has increased, but the resources available to these parks have either declined or maybe they're the same. And I was wondering, for our friends from the Parks Department who are here, if they know whether any public outreach has been attempted, where the Parks Department or the Conservancy or Riverside Park, they solicit volunteers specifically from the community to help clean up the parks. And I know that, it's the summer, people are looking to spend time outside. Maybe this could be a productive use of the time of people in the community. I know that I would be interested in doing something as long as it's, well organized and, the timing works for people. So this is just kind of an advice to the representatives from the parks who are on the meeting today, that maybe we could come up with some sort of a public outreach plan, because the parks are just being used like never before, and that has consequences. And we as community members can step up to help.
Natasha, I see all the time, I'm in Riverside Park in the mornings, and I see overflown, not just overflowing, but overflown, if that's the right word, trash baskets with lots of trash on the ground, and you hope it's not going to end up all over the place and in the river. The only Parks Department representative we have with us tonight is Matt Genrich, so we're going to put him back on to speak to the extent he can.
One quick thing.
But first, Doug has his hand up. It sounds like probably at the same point.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one quick thing, Clary. I think a lot of you saw on the news today, there was, at least with the MTA and in the subways today, there's now what's called a mask force. So people wearing yellow t-shirts, and they're volunteers who are going out to give out masks. In the same vein as what I think, Natasha, which I think is like a brilliant idea for volunteers to try to get involved with. Whether it's volunteers trying to do trash pickup or whether to give out masks in the park, I think that could be something where community boards and our board could play a leadership role in trying to implement with parks. So Matt, maybe if there's anything in the works on the Riverside side, and certainly on the Central Park side, we would love to.
But before we put Matt in the hot seat, Doug McGowan, were you wanting to address the same issue, and then we'll turn to Matt?
Not the same issue, no.
Okay, then let's turn to Matt to see if he has any wisdom on this for us. Matt.
Yeah, I would definitely encourage you guys to reach out to Central Park Conservancy, Riverside Park, and Partnerships for Parks. They are, especially Partnerships for Parks is kind of our, they organize, volunteer efforts in our parks. And I think that they would be, if you had some resources available where you could provide some volunteers to do some cleanups, Riverside Park, the Central Park Conservancy and Partnerships for Parks would definitely be interested in that. As a whole, the city is down employees because we didn't receive we normally get an influx of seasonal employees to help us with the high season, which we didn't receive this year. So we are, we're doing, the best that we can with the resources that we have. So if groups want to come out and volunteer some time to do some basic cleanup, I think that would be something worth pursuing.
Matt, we'll contact both Riverside Conservancy and Central Park about this, but you yourself are the manager for the rest of the parks in our district, and that's a tall order in many parks. Do you feel that with the resources you have now, but with all these folks now in your parks, would you feel you're able to keep up with the trash? The big bellies helped, I know, the big trash cans, but they're only limited in number.
For the rest of the smaller parks, we're able to manage it. We've shifted some resources around Theodore Roosevelt Park can be a challenge at times, especially when the green, with the green market. But we're able to manage our resources. Some of my larger parks in the other districts outside of Community Board 7, I'm actually in communication with my friends of groups to try and see what we can do with volunteers. So not in 7, but in Community Board 9, I'm looking in some of my larger parks.
Okay, that's helpful. So we'll communicate with both the Riverside Park Conservancy about Natasha's thought and also with the Central Park Conservancy. Is that it for this topic, trash, etc.? Then let's turn to Doug McGowan, who has a different point, and I do want to make sure I tell you some good news too. Doug?
Thanks,
There's that
Clary.
smile.
Can you hear? Okay, thanks, Clary. This is part based on Natasha's comment, but it's not direct. More generally, though, the committee during this meeting has talked about the increased use of parks in the current climate during the current crisis. So just it's a general question. If it's the wrong place, then we can discuss it somewhere else because there might be a process already in place. But we've recently passed 2 resolutions through full board related to parks and enforcement. Many of the committee members have considered those to be pretty urgent enforcement requests for our local community because of the increased use of these parks during this time. So do we have a process to ensure communication of those resolutions to the appropriate parties?
We do.
Okay.
We do, and Mark, I want to say just what we have done, what you have done really, but for the board.
Sure. So to cut right to the chase, there are some resolutions from some committees that are handled by the district office as a matter of course. When BCI approves a sidewalk cafe, they don't need me to get it to DCA. But with resolutions like this one, they are sort of sui generis. Anyway, they're
sort of unique, right, Mark?
Exactly, thank you. So in each of the cases of the 2 resolutions that you are referring to, the bike enforcement and the
dog leash.
Dog leash. I wrote a direct letter to the appropriate folks. So in these cases, the appropriate folks were the commanding officer of the Central Park Precinct and the Borough Commissioner for Manhattan for the Parks Department, copying a few of their, copying the Conservancy and some of the other leaders in those divisions, and then copying also our city elected officials and our state elected officials. I chose not to include the federal on this one. The only person who has responded is to the first one was the commanding officer of the Central Park Precinct, and I am in ongoing, who wants to come to a meeting, but he wants to come to a live meeting, so we're working through the issues of whether police infrastructure and equipment can be used on Zoom, or if not, how else to do it. And there seems to be a lot of seem to be as many people with different points of view on that as there are anything else you'd find in the Upper West Side. So the shortest answer is they have been communicated. There has been a little bit of response, and I look forward to having some kind of better dialogue about that when we're able to do that.
And then Doug, just to follow on that for a moment with regard to tonight's, it's a proposed resolution.
Sure.
So it's not going to go anywhere on CB7 letterhead until we have the full board meeting in September, and I certainly hope it'll be adopted because I voted for it. But as I said, the most important people to listen to our discussion tonight, rather than us hearing each other, were the council members' reps. So they know about these issues, they know what the rationale is, and maybe they'll be able to, if they choose to, move ahead even without waiting for September. I have, and does anybody, Barbara, and then I want to tell you my good news, but Barbara, what do you got? You have your hand up,
you called on me?
Yeah.
Is that right? Oh, okay. I wondered if it would be possible to see the letter that got sent out. Could we get a copy of it?
Sure.
Okay. That'd be great. Thank you.
Okay. Which one, on the dogs or on the traffic enforcement? or both?
Oh, I'd love to see both of them.
Okay,
Yeah,
good. Okay.
thank you.
Okay, good news, guys, or pretty good news. I had a call from Steve Simon, who's the Chief of Staff for Manhattan Parks Department, just this evening to say that he couldn't get to our meeting tonight because we had invited them, and he said, but Matt Genrich is going to be here for the Parks Department, and I said, we know that, and Matt's always welcome. But with regard to, and all of our committee members and our board members know about the skate park at 100 A Street, I think it is. It's been under construction. It's a huge project. It was nearly done when the coronavirus hit. Anyway, a part of it is nearly done. The rest of it is not quite so nearly done. What Steve said to me tonight is what they're likely to do is very soon, after doing the finishing touches on not the big bowl, which is not ready, but the kind of rest of it, or most of the rest of it, they're likely to have sort of a soft opening to the public for that part of the skate park. They're not going to have a formal ceremony. We may remember talking at our meetings about a ceremony, but you know, nobody can have a formal ceremony these days. The second part of it would be the bowl and some other surrounding features. That's not ready yet, so that would be done in a second phase. But what Steve and I talked about is, and Doug, I'm sure you've observed this, Cindy and the rest of us who spend time nearly every day in Riverside Park, since the dog runs reopened, since the basketball shooting courts reopened, and other facilities in Riverside Park, we see tons of people in them. I mean, unfortunately, in the basketball courts, these kids I see playing, they're not wearing masks mostly. But all of these facilities that are reopened are very popular. We have a tremendous demand for further available real estate and amenities open in our parks. What Steve said to me, and I've seen this too, you got kids down there at 100 A Street that are crawling over and through the fences and getting onto the site of the skate park already. So it's really, I think, very good news that they're going to open the part that can be opened quite soon. They're going to let us know. But you know, better that, I think, than, and they think, most importantly, the Parks Department thinks, than waiting for the whole thing to be done. Do we have anything else? Mark, anybody, anything else? Because we're not going to meet in August.
Hope everyone has a great summer if we don't see you before September.
Well, we'll see you all in Riverside Park. We'll see you all in Central Park, right? We'll see you all in Matt's parks.
Thank you all.
Clary, I did have one last question.
Sure.
Maybe Matt can answer this. Are the Teddy Roosevelt Park green areas open or not?
They're currently actually not open at this time. But I do actually, I have the construction on the dog run should be getting completed fairly soon as well.
Okay,
so,
great.
So we'll be looking forward to that being done.
Matt, was that construction halted for some period of months?
It was, yeah, so I think about 3 months, 4 months, however long they halted construction for COVID, it got halted as well.
So that dog run is, even though dog runs in general are reopened, that one is not open now because it's still under construction. Is that the deal?
Correct.
Well, then it'll be great when that gets.
Great. And the Riverside dog runs are all open at this point, right?
Yep. Oh, wait.
As far as I'm aware.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I just want to say that even though the green area in like across from the dog run in Teddy Roosevelt Park is not open, it's very heavily used. You know, I see people in there all the time.
Yeah, I'm aware of the issue. It's signed, and it's something I've been communicating with our borough office.
Right.
And I think we had one other question that came in about, actually two. One was about the opening date for Riverside Park South, the phase 5, and then about construction, let's see, on pools, which Paul Fisher was asking if a pool is an opening, but maybe the Riverside Park South question first.
I know something about that one. I've spoken to Margaret Bracken relatively recently. So with Riverside Park South, we've really got 3 areas of construction that we're talking about. One is not yet started, but will start soon, which is adding some changes and amenities the original first part of the park to be built, that is between about 68th and 72nd. That hasn't started yet, but it's going to be done in way, it is now contracted out. It'll be starting fairly soon, and we hope and believe it'll be done in ways that won't close that whole part of the park. The two phases that are brand new are phase 5, which runs from, what is it, about 64th or 5th to 68th or so. That was nearly, it's a very long, complicated story. It's been years. It's being done by the Parks Department, and never mind the whole story. In any event, it was nearly done finally after many years of delays, and it was very close to finishing when the COVID hit and all construction stopped. We've been told by Margaret Bracken that they have resumed construction, and without putting a date on it, they do expect to open up that phase 5 quite soon, whatever that may mean. Well, the really good thing about that is that it includes a ramp, a separate ramp devoted to bicycles that can access the park off of Riverside Boulevard at 66th Street, I think it is, and then take a dedicated ramp down to the Greenway. That's just a hugely important feature there. It's got another playground, small, I think it's a teeny kid playground or maybe a medium-sized kid playground. It's got lawns, it's got some other features. What was never bid and may never happen, and is really bad about that, is the plans always called for a comfort station up at the boulevard at 66th Street and a concession. That's what they call the architecture. It's designed by different people. It's separately bid out. They never bid it out. They thought the cost is too high. It's not clear whether it will ever happen. So that's the bad part. But the good part is the landscape features, including the big bike rampy thing, are very close to opening. The other part of Riverside South is nowhere near close to opening, and that's phase 6, which is southward from about 65th Street, 64th Street, maybe it is, down to 59th Street. That is the last piece of unbuilt park. It is being built or will be built by the developer. It's part of a very long story that dates back to the early 90s. Very sad, difficult, frustrating story for us and others as well. Last I knew that
even involving the person who's currently president.
That's right. That's right. That's right. The last I knew, phase 6 had not yet been contracted by the developer. They are projecting a couple of years of construction. Very frustrating, but phase 5 will be a tremendous amenity when that opens. Mark, do you have anything to add on that? Okay.
So I was just gonna address Paul's question really briefly, and I think it's about the Lasser pool. I think that's what he's referring to. So
yes.
So I think the question is about whether construction is going to start early at the pool. I don't think the pool is opening this summer, right? So
the answer is that I'm sorry, go ahead, Elizabeth.
No, you know the answer. I don't know the answer. So
the answer is that an organization that is affiliated with a former developer on that previous site you were talking about,
nameless here,
still has a concession for that facility, and that concession doesn't run out until sometime next year. And so closing the pool because the governor won't allow us to assemble is one thing, but it would be a breach of contract to pull the plug on the concession prematurely. So so there are two different things. So unfortunately, that means that can't be moved up. Matt, is there? I'm pretty sure I'm right about that, but is there anything that you've heard that whether there's even an effort to try that?
Yeah, I don't have any information on it. So
okay, one other piece then on construction. Nobody's mentioned this, but I'm glad we were talking about these things. You folks on the committee and other board members will remember we spent a great deal of our lives talking about the project to reconstruct the rotunda at 79th Street and the bike paths and the landmark aspects and the whole thing, and huge project. We spent a great deal of time on it. We made our opinions known to the Department of Transportation's Bridges Division, is who is dealing with that. They had always said they were going to start construction in 2020. We then never heard from them again about anything. And then COVID hit. The best scuttlebutt we've got from that, and Mark, I spoke to Penny about that just a couple days ago. Very vague, but it was that they are not likely to start till sometime in 2021. I asked Penny if she knew whether they ever had gotten to the point of having a contract, because this is like a, $150 million contract or something like that. She didn't know. She was going to try to find out. The fallout from that, though, and this is another matter that's close to our hearts, although one on which we do not always agree, is that what we call the Rosenthal bypass had been put into effect in, let's call it Memorial Day of 2019. So when we approved the plans, we didn't have any choice about its being constructed in general, because it came out of a participatory budgeting item for Helen Rosenthal that passed. So that is the mandatory inland bypass or detour that cyclists have to take from 72nd Street to 83rd Street. People have had many opinions about it, pro and con, but in any event, what we did when we approved the design for it, which did not involve a lot of construction, it was more signage and limited paving and things like that. We put in a 2-year look back, or a 2-year, and this is largely, Ken was very active in this issue, and that was a good thing. So we were going to give it a look at after 2 years, and what Margaret said to me recently is it looks as if, because the bypass would be closed for the rotunda construction, so we were never going to have that 2 years. But now it looks as if we will have the 2 years to have a look back, because although Margaret Bracken is not doing the rotunda work, she's certainly coordinating with that. The best sense I got of putting all of this together is the rotunda work is not likely to start, and therefore close off the bypass until the 2-year point. We don't know that for sure. They may be able to start the rotunda sooner, but all these things sort of are, part of the same octopus, and we'll find out more when we find out more. Anything else?
Sounds like that's a wrap.
Thanks, we're great. Have
Eric,
a great summer, everyone.
And Gail, if she's still with us, all of you, and Matt.
Sorry, just to be sure, this is a quick last question administrative wise. For our September meeting, are there any holiday observances, Mark, for that Monday? For our September, I need to check and make sure.
Oh, what a good question.
I was thinking about that this weekend myself. Is Shelley still with us?
Yom Kippur is on a Monday.
Give us a date.
It's the 21st, I believe. So it will be the third Monday.
What's the third Monday in September?
Yom Kippur. That's our parks meeting, right?
The third Monday would be our parks committee. What date is that?
No, I'm sorry. Yom Kippur starts on the evening of the 27th.
Oh, okay. So, okay.
Wait, what about Rosh Hashanah?
Rosh Hashanah is on Friday night, Saturday, Sunday.
So we're okay.
Yeah.
So it looks as if, that's a very good issue, a very good point.
I think
It looks as if we'll be on our regular date in September, 6:30, third Monday.
On September 21st.
Right. And thank you, everybody. Oh, I should say, while we don't meet, we're not asleep. Our committee's never really on vacation. So, we do stuff. If we need to talk about anything, if anybody wants to talk about anything,
I think maybe the only last thing to mention is that we will be meeting jointly with the Transportation Committee at their September meeting on the issue of Revel as it pertains to safety in general, but the parks in particular. So that will be a joint item that is on the Transportation Committee agenda, which I guess will be September 8th, right? And so for folks who have interest in that, you've probably read a lot of the news. It's we'll have the month of August to have a very structured meeting prepared for you all in September.
Right. Yeah. As you probably know, guys, riding Revels, these mopeds in our parks is forbidden, but people see them there all the time. When we got wind that the Transportation Committee was going to be having an agenda item about this, we said, hey, we want in, because it's very much a parks issue as well. So
yeah, that's September 8th, and then our committee meeting is the 21st. Have a great summer, everyone.
Natasha, let's be in touch about the minutes.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.